Today on Revelation to Transformation,
what it means to hurt, what it means to feel like a loser, what it means to hunger, what it means to have stress, what it means to have pain. He does not know what it means to fail, because in all points like us yet without sin. Ready for the next step? Yet God needed him to know what it felt like to fail. 2 Corinthians 5:21. Are you still with me? Okay. I figure I'm safe. I'm just walking slowly and calmly and carefully.
What is meant by the term salvation? And what are some ways to effectively share your faith with others? Pastor Paul White was recently asked to submit 6 30-minute sermons aimed at an audience of unbelievers in order to introduce them to the gospel of Jesus Christ. These sermons are currently airing on an international Christian satellite network with a potential audience of over 1 billion people. Now you can own these 6 sermons on DVD as study tools for effective evangelism, or share them with friends and loved ones who need to hear the good news about God's love and Christ's sacrifice. This 6 DVD set can be yours for only $30 plus $5 shipping and handling. Contact us today at 1-877-244-3353 or order online at www.paulwhiteministries.org.
He's hanging on a cross. I know there's no fight left, but that didn't stop criminals from cursing their executors and spewing out hatred at the crowd. But there's none of that from Jesus, and of course we don't expect there to be. But Father, forgive them. They know not what they do. We'll get to that. To do that, let's check out this crowd at the cross. Luke 23:26. And I want to show you some of the people gathered around there. I did a sermon many years ago called or the multitude at the cross, or something along those lines, and I dealt with each individual class of people that were at the cross. I don't want to get that deep tonight, but I do want to take a gander a little bit through these scriptures and take a look at some of these people. Now, as they led him away, they laid hold of a certain man, Simon a Cyrenian, who was coming from the country, and on him they laid the cross that he might bear it after Jesus. And so there's a stranger from the country who's at the cross. By the way, this is a black man, another race. There was as much racism in the world of Palestine, the day of Christ, as there has been at any point in history in any place in the world. And that racism extended past even what a lot of us know as racism. It's not just color, but the racism in that day had to do with the race of religion that you adhered to. It wasn't just the race of your skin. It was the race, you were from the race of the Jews or from the race of some other religion of which they might have called a cult or whatever. And so there was a lot of racism. Most of it rotated around religion, but skin color was certainly one of those as well. And a great multitude of the people followed him, and women who also mourned and lamented him. So there's a great multitude and a group of women who follow. And then this statement coming up is amazing, that in the middle of his being beaten half to death, before he ever gets to the cross, Jesus on his way to the cross, just having Simon pull the cross off of his shoulders and put it on his own. So now Jesus has that weight lifted and finds the intestinal fortitude, I guess, to say to the women gathered there his last great prophecy before he goes to the cross. And it is this: daughters of Jerusalem, do not weep for me, but weep for yourselves and for your children. For indeed the days are coming in which they will say, blessed are the barren wombs that never bore, and breasts which never nursed. That's an interesting statement. Who would ever say blessed are the womb that, in other words, blessed are the women that never had children? We're going to get to why he says that. Then they will begin to say to the mountains, fall on us, and to the hills, cover us. This is almost a direct quote from the 10th chapter of Hosea, by the way. For if they do these things in the greenwood, what will be done in the dry? That's an interesting way to close out this prophecy. And this is one of the more unheralded prophetic proclamations that Jesus makes in his earthly ministry, because we don't see this repeated often. And this is Jesus in the midst of the turmoil of dying on Calvary. He's about to go to the cross, stops and says to a group of women who are following him, stop crying for me. You ought to be weeping for your own children. Now that tells me something about the state of Israel at the moment that Jesus goes to the cross. And Jesus knows that there is a judgment that is going to fall on national Israel for their repeated rejection of God and their final capstone rejection of God in the flesh. They rejected Jesus. Remember, just before he goes into Jerusalem on Palm Sunday, Jesus stands outside of Jerusalem and says, Jerusalem, O Jerusalem, how often have I wept for you and wanted to gather you in and protect you like a hen gathers her chicks, but you wouldn't let me. And then he tells those Jews there, now your house is left to you desolate. You shall see armies entrenched about your city, compassing you round about. Those prophecies were in their future, but it was in their future. It wasn't in our future, it was in their future. So on his way to the cross, Jesus says to the women that are crying, you ought to be crying for your own kids. Why should you be crying for your own kids? Because as bad as you think it is today, you're killing the Lord of glory. You're killing your only hope for salvation. This empire that's killing me is going to kill you. This empire, the Roman Empire, okay? This is not the American empire. This is not the Israelis and the Palestinians. This is not out in our future on the other side of a globe. This is Jesus said, the empire that is killing me is going to kill you. You ought to weep for your own kids. The day is going to come when the woman will be considered blessed that doesn't have a kid to cry for. Because you're going to lose all of your kids and all of your grandkids. They're all going to be in trouble at the hands of the same people that are putting me on this cross. Can you see that prophecy? Then they're going to say to the mountains, fall on us. I'm in 30. To the hills, cover us. If they're going to do these things in the greenwood, what is going to be done in the dry? This is the moment. Life is on the earth. If they're going to do this while life is on the earth, whose life? Jesus. They're going to kill life, the greenwood. What would they do in the dry? What would they do when I seem so far away? And so the prophecy is not in our future. Please get this. I'm not just wanting to belabor that. I want you to see that Jesus actually stops on the road to the cross and deals one more moment with the prophetic. And that moment of the prophetic has no hope in it. Did you catch that? He doesn't say, if you guys will stop. No, it's over. I'm already on my way to the cross. It's over. There's no turning back. You ought to start crying now for your own kids. Because all of this is going to come to fruition. Now that's part of the crowd at the cross. 32. We could really list these off, and if you're a note taker, it would be worth it. List off the people that's at the cross. Take a look at the crowd, because the crowd is a crosscut. And if we did a whole series on it, you'd see a crosscut of all the different types of people in both the world and the church. You got the stranger from the country, from the wrong race, he's at the cross in 26. You got the weeping women in 27, they're at the cross. You got 32, there were also two others, criminals, led with him to be put to death. There's your malefactors, your thieves, your criminals. Us, for lack of a better word. I don't mean us post-grace, I mean us without Jesus. Criminals, thieves, robbers. And when they had come to the place called Calvary, by the way, in case this kind of stuff interests you, it does me. This is the only place in the Bible it's called Calvary. It's Luke chapter 23, verse 33. Calvary. There they crucified him and the criminals, one on his right hand, and the other on the left hand. And then Jesus said, Father, forgive them. They do not know what they do. I want to spend some really serious time right there, but I'm going to leave it for a second so we can get through the context. And they divided his garments, and they cast lots. And the people stood looking on. There's another group, the people, just the multitude. In fact, I think the old King James may say multitude. But even the rulers with them sneered. Here's another group, the religious rulers. The religious rulers with them sneered, saying, he saved others, let him save himself. If he is the Christ, the chosen of God. The soldiers also mocked him. There's another group at the cross. The soldiers mocked him, coming and offering him sour wine and saying, if you are the King of the Jews, save yourself. And an inscription also was written over him in letters of Greek, Latin, and Hebrew. This is the King of the Jews. Then one of the criminals who were hanged blasphemed him, saying, if you are the Christ, save yourself and us. But the other answering rebuked him, do you not even fear God, seeing that you are under the same condemnation? I stop right there. See the crowd at the cross? You got to cross-cut everybody. You got the soldiers, you got the criminals, you got the religious leaders, you got the weeping women, you got the stranger from the country. You got people mocking, you got people offering up fake offerings, the offerings of sour wine, the offering of libations. You got all kinds of blasphemy happening at the foot of the cross. And yet right sandwiched in the middle of it is, Father, forgive them. They know not what they do. This is absolutely bizarre because forgiveness is an unusual thing that is unique to humans. And even better, particularly unique to believers. It's only Jesus, of all the leaders of all the religions of the world, dare to say to his followers, love your enemies. Pray for those who persecute you. Forgive them. Why do I say it's unnatural? Because animals don't do it. An animal doesn't forgive another animal. It's dog eat dog, to use the analogy. Why would they? It's unnatural to forgive. In fact, it's almost impossible sometimes. Because sometimes it's easy. Guy takes something from you and says, I'm sorry. You go, well, I forgive you. Other times it's not so easy because what they took from you, you can't get back. In the case of murder, or what? I mean, we can always give a big list of things and go, that's impossible to forgive. And I think the fact that Jesus says, Father, forgive them, they know not what they do, is the most superhuman thing in the world, because I got to go back to this. I haven't been able to get off this in 3 days. What we said Sunday morning, where we're in the Old Testament, in those little minor prophet letters, where God, there's just little gold glimpses, little like gold nuggets in a pan. When you're sifting through those Old Testament scriptures, like the prospector, he's got all the little gravel chunks coming out, and then boom, flash in the pan, the gold nugget, and that's sometimes you find that stuff in the old minor prophets, and you're prospecting for gold, and then boom, there's God right there in Micah and right there in Hosea going, you expect me to kill them and judge them, but I'm a God of mercy and I pardon their iniquity, and you think vengeance should be had on them, but I say to you, my ways are not your ways, and my thoughts are not your thoughts, and my thoughts are higher than your thoughts. And when you start to realize what God is saying is that my heart beats and burns towards love, it's overwhelming. It blows my mind. And how he could be so forgiving in light of the fact we're created by God. He made humans what we are, and yet it's the hardest thing in the world for us to do is forgive, because we don't forget. Am I right? Yeah, but you're supposed to forgive and forget. Impossible. You can't do that. You're not a shark. I mean, you see, a shark doesn't have long-term memory. A shark gets in a fight, 15 seconds later. I don't know how they do these studies. 15 seconds later, the shark doesn't remember anything. He lives completely on instinct, no long-term memory. I don't know if he knows anything about forgiveness, but he knows everything about forgetfulness. Well, he doesn't know anything about forgetfulness because he already forgot it. Did you get my point? But as a human, we don't have that ability. God didn't give us that ability to just turn it off and go, well, yeah, I forgive him all. I forgot all about it. In fact, I think that if we were really honest with the characters in the Bible, there's a lot of people who had a problem with this. I'm really trying to set you up for something, so just kind of run with me with this for a second, if you would. I remember preaching and teaching a lot of times that every character in the Bible had flaws, and we would use that sometimes just try to make people feel better. Because don't feel so bad, because, hey, David was an adulterer and a murderer. You can't be that bad. Jacob was this and whatever. And we always got these ideas, these theories about who's bad. You lost? Come here. Take off this way. Crystal, can you lead her right back there? Follow that young lady right there. She'll tell you where to go. All right. No one that comes into Midland lost leaves lost. You come in lost, you will get found. All right. Old Testament characters, and I think we did it sometimes just to make ourselves feel better. Go, this guy's a murderer, this guy's an adulterer. You can't be that bad. But then we had characters like, I remember I would say this, I go, well, there's one character in the Old Testament that never had any problems. And we go, Joseph. Joseph was basically sin-free, he's fault-free. And then we would say, he's a lot like Jesus. Okay. The more I study Joseph, the more I don't think that Joseph was fault-free. I think Joseph was extremely, extremely human in this one area. Joseph really had a hard time forgiving his brothers. Because when they came in, what's he do? He doesn't tell him who he is. Why doesn't he tell him who he is? I think there's a piece of Joseph that wants them to stew a little while, and it works. And they freak out. In fact, he sends them home and never tells them he's their brother. And then sticks silver cups in their saddlebags so that they get caught for theft and have to get drugged back in, thrown in prison. I think there's a little piece of Joseph as they're walking out of the room going, I'm going to get you now. But they're not out of the room very long and his heart breaks. And you see this roller coaster this guy's going through. They'll be in the room and he won't reveal himself to them. And then he'll run out of the room and slam the door into his private chamber and he'll bawl his eyes out. And his servants come in and go, what's wrong? Are you sick? And he goes, no, get out. He's struggling on the inside. How do I do this? And I think there's a piece of him that's so human that he just can't bring himself to do it. But there's that piece that loves and that forgives and that wants there to be grace and wants there to be mercy. So after he sends them home and then they come back with his brother and then he still won't reveal himself to him, this goes on, this little charade goes on for like 4 or 5 chapters. Until finally he comes in bawling his eyes out and says, I'm your brother. I'm the one that you sold into slavery. And then there's that great reunion. And why did it take him 4 chapters? Because he's like me. And he's like you. And he said, I'm not going to forgive him. In fact, I'm going to entrap him. I'm going to make him sweat it out. I'm telling you this because Jesus, when he hangs on the cross and says, Father, forgive them, they know not what they do, is the most unhuman, most alien thing that could have ever come out of a human being's mouth. Here's where the little twist happens. So I'm just setting you all up just for this. And I want you to stay with me on this for a little bit. I've got your confidence, I think, and your trust that you can handle me saying this and not, push me off the ledge. I don't think God could say it until he wrapped himself in human flesh and lived as a man. And I think more and more and more that's why the Old Testament looks the way that it does. And then God put on an earth suit, wrapped himself up in human flesh, and was raised on planet Earth as a human. And went through all the stuff that he goes through. Jesus changed everything. Jesus absolutely changed everything. And I'm saying all that to set up a verse. You know I am. Experientially, which means by experience, God didn't know what it was like. Now, I know I'm dancing on dangerous ground here because we always go, well, God knows everything. But experientially, he had never been a human and said no to sin. Experientially, he had never had a bad day. He had never been stressed out. He had never lost a loved one in the flesh. We could say, yes, but he lost Adam. That was bigger. Okay, I'm not going to argue with that theological point. Yeah, absolutely. But he didn't know what it meant to be a human. He didn't know what it meant to be stressed in his mind. He's God. He didn't know what it meant to be hungry when he hasn't eaten 40 days and 40 nights. All of the stuff that we know how to feel and we know how to experience, and we're not very good at it. He didn't even know how to do it. To hang at Calvary and then say, Father, forgive them, they know not what they do, is not only earth-shattering, universe-changing, unbelievable, alien, and non-human to say, but it might be the most poignant and important thing that ever came out of God's lips. I just figured out they don't know what they're doing. My creation knows not what it does. Now, the reason I can say this, I got to hurry and get into Scripture because people staring at me like, well, you lost your mind. Well, you know what you're saying about my God. No, okay, I promise I do know. Hebrews chapter 4. I know, I got to hurry. I got to get into the Word. So I'm going to come back to that thought. I know it's jarring. It's a jarring thought, but I'm working with it here, okay? I'm working through it. I want to show you some Scripture. I'm not trying to insinuate that God was ignorant. I'm not trying to insinuate that God didn't understand, that he didn't have all knowledge. But God certainly knew what God knew from outside of space and time as God. But when he wrapped himself up in human flesh and became a man, he had to have seen something through the eyes of humanity that you never see until you're in the eyes of humanity. I'm just being logical here. I'm not trying to be sacrilegious or blasphemous. I'm just saying that he had to have seen something when he became a man that was worth becoming a man for. Okay, now we're on the same page. Hebrews chapter 4. Now, if you could get what I just said, then read these verses through that lens. Think that way. Ready? Hebrews 4, verse 14. Seeing then that we have a great high priest who has passed through the heavens, Jesus the Son of God, let us hold fast our confession, for we do not have a high priest who cannot sympathize with our weaknesses, but was in all points tempted as we are, yet without sin. Let us therefore come boldly to the throne of grace, that we may obtain mercy and find grace to help in time of need. Now, what I really want you to catch is in the 15th verse, the reader is supposed to walk away from the text believing that his high priest can sympathize with all of our weaknesses. Why? Because we have a high priest that faced the exact same weaknesses that we faced, yet did not fail, which means every temptation, every stress, every hunger, every loss, every pain, he went through it. And it taught God something. I know, I even cringe as I say it. And I'm being very slow, careful. It didn't teach God something he didn't know. Please understand, he's all-knowing. He knows it all. But it taught God through the lens of his creation what it means to suffer, what it means to lose, what it means to hurt, what it means to feel like a loser, what it means to hunger, what it means to have stress, what it means to have pain. He does not know what it means to fail, because in all points like us, yet without sin. Ready for the next step? Yet God needed him to know what it felt like to fail. 2 Corinthians 5:21. Are you still with me? Okay. I figure I'm safe. I'm just walking slowly and calmly and carefully just to let the scriptures speak for themselves. Jesus needed to know what it felt like to fail. Here's the problem. It's catch-22. He can't fail. If he fails, then he can't save me because he's a failure and somebody's got to come save him. So how can we teach Jesus what it feels like to fail so that he'll know how I feel when I fail, and yet he can't fail because that blows the whole thing open. So God does something completely unfair. God steps in at Calvary and does something absolutely unfair. 2 Corinthians 5:21. For God made him who knew no sin to be sin for us, so that we might be made the righteousness of God in Christ. So what did God do? He took sin and put it in his Son and viewed his Son through the lens as if he had failed. Did he fail? No. Hebrews 4 was very clear. Committed no sin. But God needed him to feel the weight of a man who has guilt, of a man who has failed. And the only way to do that, and you and I still go free, is if God makes a great exchange. And he says, I'll take everything that is wrong with man, and I'll put it in my Son, so that man can be free from the weight and the sin that does so easily beset him, so that he can have put in him the very righteousness that he's never been able to achieve and he's never going to be able to achieve, because he can't live right. How do I know he can't live right? Because I just moved into human flesh and walked, and it's tough. Now, I made it. I'm talking as God now. I made it. Every temptation, yet no sin. But it's hard. I'm still in the book. I want to get even more in the book, all right? I want to prove to you. I want to show you that Jesus bumped up against the exact same stuff that Paul did. Do you remember this? Paul writes, there was a messenger of Satan sent to buffet me, and 3 times I prayed that God would remove it. And finally, God came and said, my grace is sufficient for you. Now, I don't know for sure what it was, and you've heard me preach what I think it might be before. And I'm not even concerned right now what it was. What I am concerned about is that 3 times, the great Apostle Paul, and I mean that in all sincerity, the great Apostle Paul, 3 times said, this is over my head. I don't know what to do about it. You're going to have to help me. I want to show you that Jesus, who does know what to do about it, faced the exact same moment. Look at it with me. Matthew chapter 26. Let's go to the Garden of Gethsemane. Matthew chapter 26, verse number 36. Then Jesus, Matthew 26, 36. Jesus came with them to a place called Gethsemane and said to the disciples, sit here while I go and pray over there. And he took with him Peter and the 2 sons of Zebedee, and he began to be sorrowful and deeply distressed. Looks like he's struggling, doesn't it? Then he said to them, my soul is exceeding sorrowful, even to death. I feel so sorry that I feel like I could die. Stay here and watch with me. So he went a little farther, and he fell on his face, and he prayed and said, oh, my Father, if it's possible, let this cup pass from me. Nevertheless, not as I will, but as you will. The last half of the prayer is what makes him greater than us. The first half of the prayer is just so distinctly human, and the last half of the prayer is so supremely unhuman. You see it? So he came back to the disciples in verse 40, and he found them sleeping. He said, Peter, what could you not watch with me 1 hour? Watch and pray, lest you enter into temptation. The spirit indeed is willing, but the flesh is weak. Again, a second time he went away and prayed and said, oh, my Father, if this cup cannot pass away from me unless I drink it, your will be done. And he came and found them asleep again, for their eyes were heavy. So he left them, went away again, and he prayed the 3rd time, saying the same words. Did you see that? 3 separate times. Jesus went to the Father and prayed the exact same prayer. What was his prayer? Father, if you will, take it away. I don't want to do this, Dad. Apostle Paul, 3 times, goes to the Lord and says, forget it, man, I can't do it. I can't do it. And God finally says, my grace is sufficient. The difference in Paul's prayer and Jesus' prayer, I don't think either one was under more or less stress. I'm not going to try to categorize them up too much, but Jesus faces his by saying, Father, if it be your will, let it pass from me. If not, I'll drink it. But I don't want to lose the sense of wonder in this text at how stressed out Jesus is on his way to the cross and how distinctly human his prayer is up until the point of, not my will, but thine will be done. I'm not trying to make Jesus out to be exactly like me or like you. I'm really not. But I am trying to show you that through Jesus, God sees every pain you ever have, every stress you ever have. Had he not come as Jesus and faced it, you and I could say when we pray, God, I know that your word says you love me, but there's no way unless you have ever walked on this earth, there is no way that you really know what I'm going through. And so God wrapped himself up in human flesh and he said, let's go find out what it means to be a man. Let's go walk. Let's go talk. Let's go love. Let's go be betrayed. Let's go have our friends turn on us. Let's have our family call us crazy. That's what happened in Jesus. Let's lose our cousin, one of our best friends. Let's have him murdered just a few miles down the road from us. Let's have the world love us and then hate us. Let's take a crowd of thousands and dwindle it down to where there's just one of them left at the cross. The night before we die, let's get down on our knees like a common dog and let's wash their feet and show them that we love them and that we care for them like nobody else has ever loved them and cared for them in their lives. Let's face the same stress they face. Let's look death square in the eye, just like every single one of them are going to have to do. Let's go to every extent and every length that they're going to have to go to. And then just before he pulls in that last breath, he says, Father, forgive them. I figured it out. They don't know what they're doing. That's both the tragedy, Father, and the beauty of being human. The tragedy is they don't know what they're doing. But the beauty is, Daddy, they don't know what they're doing. You catching why that's both tragic and beautiful? It's tragic, Dad, that they don't know what they're doing. It's beautiful, Dad. I'm going to come out of this tomb, and everyone that will accept me, I'm going to move in. And for the first time ever, they can know what they're doing. Man, I hope I'm relaying that like it's popping inside of my spirit right now. Let me show you another comparison to that. Go look at Luke 22. We started in 23, but go back to the garden right in front of Luke 23. Luke chapter 22. Verse number 41. We're in the garden again, but we're in Luke's version of the events, and we see something peculiar and fascinating at the same time. Luke 22:41, he was withdrawn from them about a stone's throw, and he knelt down and prayed and said, Father, if it's your will, take this cup away from me. Nevertheless, not my will, but yours be done. Then an angel appeared to him from heaven, strengthening him. Wow. Jesus Christ, the Son of God, the Lord of glory, the Prince of Peace, down on his knees in a garden in the middle of the night, sweating as it were great drops of blood, and an angel from God had to show up and provide him with strength. Why? Because Jesus decided to walk exactly like you and me. And he faced it, and he knows now what it means for you to hurt and for you to suffer and for you to cry out, God, help me. Had God ever cried out to himself for help? Why would he? But when he became a man, now I hope you see where I've went with this whole thing. When he became a man, he allowed himself to get pushed all the way to the edge in every area so that he could cry out to God for help, so that he would truly know what it means to be a man in trouble, stressed beyond the max, and have to be ministered to from an external source. It's safe to say that up until this moment, everything Jesus ever faced in his earthly ministry, he was able to overcome it by simple sonship identity, the knowledge that I am the Son of God. Everything. He faces the devil in the wilderness, never breaks a sweat. No problem. 40 days, 40 nights without food, still never breaks a sweat. He knows who he is. Every word that proceeds out of my Father's mouth, that's how I'm going to defeat you. What was the last thing I heard my daddy say? This is my beloved Son, whom I am well pleased. Hey, you ain't got nothing over on me. I know I'm the Son of God. Everything had always been internal. He just went and spent a little time with God, and the Father restored and renewed him. And then comes Gethsemane. And it takes an angel to come down and strengthen the Lord of glory. I'm not weakening God's stance. I'm simply showing you that God voluntarily walked in your shoes. Voluntarily walked in my shoes. Angel appeared from heaven and strengthened him. And being in agony, he prayed more earnestly. And then his sweat became like great drops of blood falling down to the ground. Was Jesus in agony here? All right, Hebrews chapter 2, and I'm going to wind it down. I feel like, without even really expecting to, I really popped a lot on you tonight. What was supposed to be a simple little sermon of Jesus in the crowd at the cross turned into a deep theological pool on our title scripture. Maybe this will help. Hebrews 2, verse 9. Now I want you to connect this with Luke 22 that we just read, where an angel came to minister to Jesus. Hebrews 2 and 9. But we see Jesus, who was made a little lower than the angels. How was Jesus made? Was he made a little higher than the angels, or was he made a little lower than the angels? Made a little lower than the angels. That's why he cried out to God and an angel came and ministered to him. Because he was like us, made a little lower than the angels. Did you notice it doesn't say, but we see Christ? It says we see Jesus. Why does the author say we see Jesus? Because he's taken the reader back to the literal man that walked the shores of Galilee. He's not taking him to Christ, the Savior of the world, the eternal one. He's taking him to the man, Jesus. Is Jesus and the Christ the same person? Yes. They are the same person. But Jesus, we know as a man that lived 2,000 years ago, that's the man God, Jesus. He and the Father are the same. We see Jesus, who was made a little lower than the angels, for the suffering of death. Why was he made lower than the angels? So that he could suffer to death. Had he been an angel, he couldn't have suffered to death. Guess what else that tells you? What if he was made above the angels? Couldn't have suffered to death. Why? Because God can't die. So God wanted to know what it felt like to die, and he couldn't figure out what it felt. I don't want you to walk out and say, well, Pastor Paul didn't think God knew stuff. God's limited in knowledge. I get in more trouble for what people say I said than what I said. God wanted to know what it actually felt like to die as a man. So he became a man, and he actually made himself on purpose a little lower than the angels so that it would take the angels to minister to him in the darkest hour of his life on this earth. So that because he was a man made lower than the angels, he could actually die, not experientially die, actually die. Suffered death, crowned with glory and honor, so that he, by the grace of God, might taste death for who? For everyone. So did you see that? You see why God did it? So the whole reason God did it was so that he could taste death, so that he would be able to console every man. I tasted death, I faced death. For it was fitting for him, for whom are all things, and by whom are all things, in bringing many sons to glory, to make the captain of their salvation. Who's there? The sons. Who's the sons? Us. We're the sons. Those of us who believe on his name, to us has been given the power to become the sons of God. John. We have the power to become the sons of God. That's what we believed on Jesus. We are the sons. God's bringing us to glory so he could make the captain of our salvation perfect. How? There it is. Through sufferings, Jesus could actually be perfect. Was he perfect before he suffered? Yes. But God needed to know exactly how you feel. He needed to know what it meant to cry. He needed to know what it meant to suffer. He even wanted to know what it felt like to die. And so he put on human flesh. Now here, this to me doesn't discourage me about God. It blows my mind that God then did it. He lived it to perfection because nobody else could. And then he willingly, the first man that did it. Perfect. By rights, he doesn't have to die. Do you see where we're at now? And the Father puts the cup in front of him and says, drink it and die for all of them. And Jesus says, Are we in the book? Father, we take this so blasé. Go out, oh yeah, I don't want to, but I'll do it if you want me to. And we just read in the Gospels, sweat drops out like blood. He's in anguish. He goes and prays 3 times about the exact same thing. We get on to people in the church if they pray twice about the same thing. It's just ridiculous. I mean, I heard that in charismatic church. You already prayed about it once, bless God. If you'd prayed about it again, it's a lack of faith. I go, man, you'd hate Jesus. 3 times we went all prayed about the same thing in the garden. Preachers would have been just kicking him out because he didn't know his book. Jesus looks at the cup and says, Father, if there's any other way, let's do it. But if not, I'll do it. We think he just went, oh, okay, that's your way. No, he went and prayed about it. He left it. And then he comes back again. He goes, Father, if there's any other way, let's do it. And he leaves it. And he comes back a 3rd time. Father, if there's can you see what's going on? But because the captain of our salvation, Jesus, suffered, bled, and died. That's Hebrews 2:10. That brings many sons into the glory of God. Thank God Jesus did what he did. And if I can put a final period on it, and maybe I'm reading too much into it, and if I am, I apologize. And if you don't see that in your spirit, that's fine. But maybe I'm reading too much into Father, forgive them. They know not what they do. I hear something behind that statement that is God saying as a man, Father, forgive them. They really just don't know what they're doing. They blaspheme you. They curse you. They'll believe one day, Dad, and then the next day they don't. I've been on this planet, Father, for 33 and a half years. 3.5 years, Daddy, I've been in ministry.
For more information about Paul White Ministries and how you can become one of Paul's partners, visit us online at www.paulwhiteministries.org. That's www.paulwhiteministries.org. Have a blessed day, and may God richly bless you.